market's open. All right, folks, thanks for coming. My name's Rob. I did the IPO. We've been doing events in Silicon Valley and San Francisco for many years. We have a busy calendar of events. I'd like to highlight, one event that's coming up. August 15th, Data Science 101. That's going to be at Sandbox Suites, 404 Bryant. So check that out. That's convenient for those of you that live in San Francisco. By the way, who lives in San Francisco? Okay. Who lives outside of San Francisco? Okay. Oh, we're trying to do more events in San Francisco to make it geographically desirable to those of you that live in San Francisco. Because people that live in San Francisco don't leave San Francisco, right? So anyway, we'll be doing more events here and more events in general in the downtown and mid-market area. But we'll still be doing events down in the valley for those of you that live down in the valley. So we launched officially February 1st, 2010, with no members and no events on our calendar. At this stage, we have over 60,000 members among all our meetup groups in the Bay Area, and we've completed over 1,789 events. We're the most active, most prolific startup event organization in Silicon Valley, bar none. Thank you. Our mission is to promote entrepreneurship, support entrepreneurs, build community, and provide value in the Silicon Valley startup ecosystem. To that end, we provide content that's practical, actionable, and relevant, stuff that you can actually use to succeed as entrepreneurs. We have many partners that help us do what we do: law firms, venture capital firms, angel investor groups, incubators, accelerators, colleges, universities, lots of players in Silicon Valley. Tonight, we're grateful to Shubhra Jain for hosting us at this beautiful venue and providing us with the beautiful view. Is that a beautiful view? And they also provided us, they sponsored the awesome buffet meal. So let's hear it for Shubhra Jain. A couple of other partners are here tonight. I'd like to have them come and say a few words. Let's hear it for Edgar and Tech Futures Group.
Hi, my name's Edgar. I'm with an organization called Tech Futures Group. We're a nonprofit that's sponsored by the federal government that helps tech companies for free. Our main focus is to help companies raise money through private equity or government grants at no charge. We take no equity and we take no cash for our services. So I'll be back there if you guys want more information. Thank you.
You just want the data?
Yeah.
So though our local mission is to support entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley and San Francisco, our global mission is to democratize entrepreneurship and innovation all around the world. To that end, we have a robust YouTube channel, youtube.com/idea to IPO. We have tons of videos, and we've documented and archived many of our events. And this content is available on demand, anytime, anywhere, totally free of charge. Whether in San Francisco, Palo Alto, Maui, Moscow, Timbuktu, it's available anywhere. Our partner in this endeavor is Bread and Butter Productions. Let's hear it for Dylan.
Thank you, Rob. My name is Dylan. I'm with Bread and Butter Productions. We are all over the Bay Area, and we shoot everything from promotional videos for small companies, businesses, to weddings, music videos, whole array of things. So I've left a card in the back. Feel free to come up if you want to get in contact. And let's hear it for Rob.
Okay, so here's the schedule for the rest of the evening. We're going to go right into our panel discussion, and that'll take us to about 8 o'clock. Audience members, if you have a question for the panel, hold your questions. At 8 o'clock, we're going to open it up. You can ask questions, and we'd like you to come up here and use the microphone, and we're going to record the question for our YouTube channel. At 8:30, we're going to wrap up the formal program. You can stick around and network. As a courtesy to Shubhra Jain, we'd like to leave the building by 9 p.m. So I'm going to pass it off to our distinguished moderator. He's one of the top intellectual property attorneys in Silicon Valley and San Francisco, and he's a partner at this firm. Let's hear it for Bill Allman.
So as a moderator, I know that you're really here to hear from the panelists, so I'll keep it short. I am a partner here in Shepherd Mullen. I work out of San Francisco rarely, but maybe twice a month. And generally I'm stationed in Palo Alto. I'm in the IP practice group, but this is a general practice firm with a number of attorneys that I keep losing track of. It's like 900 or something. So we do a lot of different stuff. If you have any questions about the firm in general or the IP practice group in particular, please come have a chat with me. As investors, I'd like you all to introduce yourselves in ways you know how, but let everybody know what you're looking for and maybe some examples of what you've invested in. Aldo, please.
So I'm a 95% entrepreneur, 5% investor, just to be clear. So I'm here to provide the perspective of a health tech entrepreneur pitching to these guys. But 15-year entrepreneur, started a number of companies, was able to successfully exit. A number of them started a company called Jukin, world's largest user-generated content, over 300 billion views online. Gave $30 million back to independent video creators. And then the other company I started was based on blockchain. So we were very early in blockchain. We started it when it was still illegal. So that was 2012. I recently exited successfully, and I got into healthcare because, family has been decimated by cancer. So that's my story. And I actually spend 5% of my time listening to pitches and investing, just because I was very early in Bitcoin. That's one. The other one is I want to keep my ear to the ground, and at the same time I want to help some companies. But so there, that's my background. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Shubhra. I am a physician by background. I practiced as a primary care physician, and I now lead healthcare investments for a fund here in San Francisco called Cota Capital. We are a stage agnostic $200 million fund. We like to invest in healthcare is about 20% of our portfolio. Within healthcare, we like to invest in companies that have robust clinical proof for whatever they're building. It could be a software. It doesn't have to be a drug or a device. It doesn't have to go through the FDA approval. It's great if it does. It's fine if it doesn't. But we look for a heavy burden of clinical proof and mostly post-product development. So we would not invest in ideas. More if you have a proof of concept product from that stage onwards all the way to IPO. Across different stages of financing is where we would invest.
Hi. Yeah, I figured I would be loud. My name is Benjamin Levy. I'm a co-founder of Bootstrap Labs. We're an early-stage venture capital firm. We're focused exclusively in investment in applied AI technologies. We're looking at transportation, logistic, financial technology, what we call the future of work or future of non-work, depending how you see the world. And we're also looking at health tech. We were one of the first funds probably to be exclusively focused on applied AI technologies about 3 years ago. We have 19 investments in our portfolio to date. We have about 3 investments into the health tech space, which I'm happy to share later about more. We tend to lead at the early stages. We understand data and software, and so we won't touch anything that's really wet. On that side, but we're looking for incredible founders that are passionate about what they do. And we don't invest in the idea stage, although we have a background as entrepreneurs ourselves, so we know what it takes. We back people first and foremost in technology, so we can invest early in teams we believe in, or founders. We like to call that the minimum viable team as opposed to minimum viable product. And we look how that team can build into the opportunities. So with that, I'll turn it over.
Thank you, Ben. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ravi Mistry. Although I'm 100% human, unless this is an inside joke that we had.
For now.
Unless you count my glasses as an intrusion to my physical body.
I have a Turing test on my phone.
Some more disclaimers. I am not a scientist, not a technologist, not a doctor, nor a VC. I am a small investor. And these days I spend a lot of time with my grandkids, as I was talking to Ben about. My background is engineering at Stanford, and then later on getting an MBA in finance, and I worked for both technology as well as life sciences companies, and then worked on a foundation. So I've done a lot of little different kinds of things in my life. I have made in the last 3 years 5 or 6 investments, mostly in the digital health and med devices area, except one where I did the investment on impulse, like you go to the store and have an impulse to buy something. I did that kind of an investment because the reference came from a young guy who said, please look at it. The second part was that the founder was a woman, which I like to promote. And then the third part was that it was for a community that is growing very fast in the US. So I'm one of the small angel investors, investing in a couple of companies a year. So any questions related to that, I would be happy to answer.
So I am curious for each of you, if it's not too personal question, about what size investment are you interested in?
Typically about 25,000. The range is between 15 and 50.
We invest between $250 and up to $1 million at the seed stage. We have a follow-on fund that does investment in Series A round. That's about $1 to $2 million.
So ours is a relatively broad range from $1 to $15 million.
So I have a syndicate, but personally, anywhere 50 to 250,000.
Great, thank you. So health tech, it's a funny term. I imagine the definition of it is going to change over time a little bit, but for anyone who wants to start, how do you define health tech? And with your definition, what are the hottest areas of health tech?
Rob had sent this definition of health technology from Wikipedia, which says that it's defined by none other than WHO, the application of organized knowledge and skills in the form of devices, medicines, vaccines, procedures, and systems developed to solve a health problem and improve quality of lives. So what you are missing here is all the technology that we are going to talk about here, including AI and other stuff. But overall, I like this definition anyway, because it is pretty inclusive of everything that goes on the healthcare sector.
I think to me, health tech is anything which is application of technology in healthcare. And that could be software or hardware. Technology can be mechanical engineering all the way to AI. In terms of hottest areas in health tech, I mean, take your pick. There is just way too much right now, right? Like AI in healthcare is a big one. I think we came up with a market map of 170 companies that are doing AI in healthcare. Blockchain in healthcare is the latest and greatest. So maybe that could be your next company. And then I think the other big one is 3D printing that I'm super excited about. 3D printing organs, 3D printing prosthetics, your custom legs and your custom lungs and livers. And then there is synthetic biology, which is synthesizing an organism in the lab. So far, there has been more application of synthetic biology in agriculture and in food science. So people are trying to make all kinds of meat in labs. But the downstream application of that is really to be able to generate organs or even full living beings in a lab.
So, I won't give you a better definition. I think what I want to give you is that why do we even need a term? Right? I think because, we had this conversation in the background. So look, the world is digitalizing. And why we're talking about health tech is because, everything that we were used to look at is becoming digital, and the massive amount of information, and to address that information, to understand it better, to find new insights, we can now start applying technology and machines and computers to do things that we couldn't do before. And so you can talk about any sort of use of technology that will help improve outcomes and cut costs or provide better health or wellness. As venture capitalists, we live a little bit in the future, which is a bit of a privilege and a curse, but we're always looking at what's coming up, what's going to be widely adopted by the market in 3 to 5 years. And if we don't have that insight, if we fail to get the right timing, we blow up the investment, potentially we blow up our funds. And so, we like to say, look, the future is already here, it's unevenly distributed, we get to see it first sometimes, and all the things you just mentioned are just example of the future. It's just very seldomly happening right now, but ideally, some of these technology will find their ways to you very fast. And so that's what we're in the business of doing. We're trying to accelerate that innovation to market so that more people can benefit from it. I think that's why it matters, really, and that's why we're all here.
So just to Ben's point, if you're looking at the intra, extra, and inter-extra data being generated by the human being, whether it's from biomechanics, informatics, or from chemistry, it's just we generate a tremendous amount of information, which is how I got into health tech. So my company's not called GlycoProX. For those who've seen it, it's actually called Ven. We're still in stealth. So what we realize is there's a lot of scientists right now that generate tremendous amounts of information. They kind of know what they're looking for, but they have to comb through 5 billion data points to find it. So when you're looking at health tech, it's how you augment these scientists to find needles they know exactly what needles that they know exactly what it looks like, except they have to comb through 5 billion stacks. It became very apparent for me, basically, starting this company, seeing that, okay, I'm used to analyzing 80, 100 petabytes of Wall Street data, blockchain data in my life, and then I'm realizing that if you're looking at a proteomic, like an isoform from a proteome, you're looking at maybe 5 gigabytes of information, and it's pretty static. And then it's already daunting. So I think the inflection point or the meeting point between guys like me who understand big data science, deep learning, and how it's applied into understanding human biology, chemistry, and physics allows us basically to have more companies that get your next generation type of breakthroughs.
So now that we have a clear definition of health tech, what areas of health tech do you think are going to be dominated by the larger, in the high-tech side, it's like the Googles of the world, and what parts of health tech do you think are going to be ripe for startups to try to tackle?
I think everything is right for startups to tackle. I don't think there is a field that startups cannot tackle. I mean, startups are, on the biotech side, startups are doing drug development. Arguably, that is the most resource-heavy side of healthcare. That's the place where you need the most resources. It takes thousands and thousands of dollars and years to run a clinical trial, and biotech startups are even doing that now. So I really don't think that there is anything that is really out of bound for startups. Now, the exit path or the journey of that startup might be different. They might get acquired by one of the bigger players, or they might build it out themselves all the way to the end and go IPO. So their journey might vary, but I really don't think that there is a specific problem area that is out of bounds.
And by the way, the stats is 95% of them probably get acquired, right? It's like the ones that can make it on their own is very small. Maybe in the health tech, we've seen actually some incredible capital efficient exits, right? I think some of the best capital efficient exits have been in the health tech space. Because again, they're hiring through, they're getting distributions, they are profitable, early or bootstrapping. There's money in the industry. It's not like there's a lack of money, but it's hard and long cycles. But I think people have been willing to finance that because the outcomes are getting really exciting and it's getting more capital efficient. But why is health tech a thing? And it's like $6 or $10 billion a year out of $100 billion in the venture industry every year, right? I mean, we're at an all-time high, probably this year and right now, but it's still a fraction when you think about it, right? And then it's happening because it's getting more and more efficient, and the returns are more attractive. So there's a massive inflow of capital into the space. If the rates change, venture capital is having a harder time raising capital. Things might change. It might not be as easy to the taking, but I think right now it's about opportunities. So I think it's definitely a good time.
Yeah, I think just comparing my experience with traditional tech, when we raised our Series A, Series B with my blockchain company, it literally took us 4 days to complete from term sheet all the way to close. With health tech, it took me 9 months. 9 months to actually get a lead investor. It is that it's incredibly difficult, even though we're doing something supremely unique. But then, if you're looking at why that's the case, apparently health tech companies there's higher risk premium. There's just way too many uncertainty. Unlike software where you can basically create something from your laptop, code over it. Apparently biology you can't control. By the way, maybe we can, because there's something called computational biology where we can actually do in silico stuff where we can control outcomes.
It's just that bugs tend to kill people as opposed to software where it doesn't usually.
Yeah. So I think it's a very important caveat that fundraising for, if who's fundraised here before? Life sciences? Who's fundraised for software? Like two very different type of experiences, right? Two very different types of diligence, two very different types of investors. And actually, it's very humbling to go from software to life sciences, even though we had deep learning and we had next generation stuff. And so I think that's a very important point that I just wanted to make sure people understood. But when you find that lead investor, everything flows in. So.
And that's been the experience for my clients too. Any high-tech client that's seeking investment gets it in 4 days.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I fell flat. Sorry.
That's because we have AI doing due diligence. It's just faster.
Well, if you stick to the broader definition of health tech here, the companies that are providing technological solutions or companies that are using technology to come up with products are the ones that are going to be growing much faster in the overall space. And look at the doctors, for example, surgeons using the virtual reality, augmented reality stuff, and look at companies that are using software for genome sequencing to come up with some of the data.
Yeah, I think we should look at the macro trends too, right? I mean, 10% of the world's population today is 65 years or older. 1 person in 4 in Japan. It's 1 person in 5 in Europe. I mean, we have an aging population, natality rate that is slowing down in most countries, forget developed or not. And that's what we're facing. And frankly, I don't know what you think your healthcare is like, but I think it's pretty crappy. It's pretty horrible. We're trying to solve problems when they happen as opposed to be preemptive. And so I think technology is going to allow us at a much lower cost to provide much better healthcare. And that's what we're excited about, and that's I think what the world is excited about. And this country cannot afford, the system it currently has, as the population is evolving. I mean, there's incredible solutions that are going to need to be built. I mean, Alzheimer's is a massive problem. I mean, I was watching a video of a village, entire village designed for people that have Alzheimer's, and it's all the cost of living there includes everything. Going to the movies, buying foods, they are, almost the ratio is 1 person helping these people for 5. And so that if you get lost, you forgot where you live, those people bring you back over there. It's incredible, but today we don't think about it. We don't like to think about aging, right? It's not sexy, but it's gonna be a massive market. And I think, 10 years ago, only 20% of the people age 65 and over were online. Now, 10 years later, it's 40%, right? And so when I'm gonna be that age, I'm gonna be pretty digitally savvy. So I think the market is also growing as you go. And so that's the market not to be underestimated. And we're living longer. In 20 years, our life expectancy in average globally has increased by 5 years. So, I mean, there's a bunch of people thinking we're going to live forever. That's a whole different conversation. I'm not sure I want to live forever. I want to have quality of life, and maybe that'll be augmented if I want to live longer. But
yeah, and then there, to your point, Ben, there's actually some funds that are thinking that aging is a disease. It's the degeneration, the oxidation and degeneration of self.
I would argue that aging is a disease.
No, I'm not arguing against that. I think it's very interesting the way that I think investors, because I'm actually part of a number of SPVs that look at all of these other different age-related biomarkers again, I'm not investing because I'm doing surveillance. I get all of these deals because just I've been doing this for a while. But you're seeing a lot of these next generation trends. People are seeing it on a macro point of view, like age, and everyone wants to live together. So together, of course, and forever. But then at the same time, you're seeing a lot of the funds. Actually, a lot of my syndicate friends, actually, what they're doing is they're paying attention to everything that's going on a macro trend. And age is actually something super big that's coming. And of course, cancer, oncology. Instead of being reactive, you're proactive. What's interesting about this, in cancer, there is, aside from mammograms, there might not be another screening tool that actually works as well as it should. Well, even mammograms suck because they hurt. So most of your cancers right now, there's companies like Grail who are trying to do early detection for a bunch of different indications. Companies like Freenome, so on and so forth. So these are the next generation trends that are coming up right now. And gone are the days where biopsies, physical biopsies, or your extraction of your tumors, genome sequencing of those things to find out if you have cancer or not. Sometimes I'm going to say the T word, so please bear with me. It's the Theranos word. The possibility of diagnosing someone with a pinprick of blood is actually possible, but not with a machine this small. Probably with a machine the size of maybe 1/6 this room. It is now possible. So that's, I think, the big trend that I'm seeing in deals, and the big trend I'm seeing as an entrepreneur myself. So it's just very interesting that the technology, whether it's an instrument, your next generation sequencing, whether it's nanopore. That's basically getting the next generation sequencing, whether it's mass spec or next generation mass spec. And of course, deep learning, the availability now of cloud compute resources that allow you to basically get your 600 Teslas running, GPUs running to compute everything in real time, which actually costs nothing. So it's just very interesting times we live in. And if you actually spend enough time on the entrepreneurship side and on the investment side, you're seeing that there's this huge wave coming. But it's still incredibly difficult to raise funds.
Well, it's not. So I would say it is incredibly difficult to raise funds for a reason. It is also incredibly difficult to build these companies. There are trends that you're seeing, but it's not easy. Try taking a fantastic product that really works and that reduces the cost of care or improves the lifespan or the quality of life, and go sell it to an Aetna or Cigna or Humana, go sell it to an insurance provider. It'll be 18 months before you will make your first sale. So if you think about it as an investor...
Raising money is hard, try that.
So so it's not... Just raising money is not the only thing that is hard in healthcare. Raising money, the difficulty in raising money is correlated very strongly to the difficulty in building these companies. It takes so much longer and so many more resources to get through an FDA approval to make your first sale to an enterprise customer. So software as a service enterprise sales in itself is 6 to 7 months sales cycle, right? Like anyone who has built a SaaS product, but that cycle gets tripled when you're in healthcare. So obviously it requires way more resources and also significantly increases the risk. So from an investor perspective, it's all about risk reward, right? Like if I'm seeing a path to exit in 2 years, then the level of diligence that I need to do and the level of conviction that I need to develop is very different from I am seeing that this company has to run a 1,000-patient trial, go through the FDA approval, maybe go through a CE mark approval in Europe, and in 5 different languages, and then has to sell to at least, let's say, 10 healthcare insurance customers before I will see $1 of my money back. So that's what I'm pricing in when I have to develop that conviction to present a term sheet.
That's 9 months and 90 seconds. I'm not kidding you. That's exactly it. 9 months in 90 seconds. And it's very humbling, but it's actually... It gives you a greater appreciation for the people that made it to the finish line. Because when you start a software company, and then you get your first customer. Like when we did the blockchain, we did the first US dollar PH. Long story. We got our first customer in like 2 weeks. Here, you're looking at a life cycle. You're looking at so many different milestones that are regulated, and you can't control any of them. And all of these risk premiums are attached to it. Very humbling, but very good. So what I did was I surrounded myself with people that knew exactly what they were doing. So to prove to our investors that they did. So it is a very, very different, very interesting pathway. And people that like foundation medicine that have gone all the way, they created a brand new category of, you guys know foundation medicine, right? They created a brand new category of predictive tests. No one is able to unseat their test right now. How they got there, wow. Even if you have a crappy test right now, well, for ovarian cancer, there's a test called CA125. Super crappy. It's the worst. But everyone uses it all the time.
Because there is nothing else.
Correct. And even if your test proves that it's better than CA125, good luck convincing doctors to use it. So that's the type of risk premiums that are now being applied to. Even if you say, yeah, we've got deep learning that can outperform any of this, no one cares. But of course, it's not the 2-year time. You're now looking at this whole regulatory pathway and a whole utility pathway that understands all these things. So,
by the way, not to discourage anyone, but I think there is a silver lining here. The silver lining here is that the bar. Honestly, I like to think that the bar in healthcare is very, very, very low. Because we are in such a bad system, and because our existing processes are so bad. Try going and improving a Google Maps algorithm. It's already 99.9% accurate, right? So what level do you have to achieve to make it move, to make the needle move even 1%? Versus in healthcare, CA125 is probably, I don't know the numbers, but I'm pretty sure it's like somewhere in between,
I'm ready to respond, I'm kidding, yeah.
The accuracy levels are so low that even if you can demonstrate a little bit of improvement, you have a long way to go. You can capture the market.
I'm going to give you a stat. 300,000 oophorectomies. That's 300,000 women getting their
ovaries
out.
removed. Yeah.
You know that there are only 20,000 people with ovarian cancer. The incidence in a month. In a year. But yet you are removing that many because CA125 sucks that much. So can you already imagine the
So if you can save even 50% of them, let's say you can get the number of ovarectomies down from 200,000 to 100,000, that itself is a big enough improvement, right? That's billions of dollars in surgeries and post-op stays saved. So the bar is very low. You don't have to do a lot to make a difference and to move the needle. So that's the silver lining for anyone trying to start a company in healthcare. I like to think of it as a low-hanging fruit, quite honestly.
You know what? I agree. It is the bar is extremely low if you're
from
looking
a technological development and a product development perspective. The bar is very low. Probably lower than most other industries, if not all. Definitely lower than the high tech and software and the traditional tech industry.
I think what you're highlighting is the fact that really if you think about the evolution of technology over the last 10 years, where all of lives have changed tremendously in so many different directions, yet in healthcare, nothing has changed. So the productive improvement that we have witnessed in every single other industry has barely started to impact healthcare. And that's why there's so much excitement around it, because we're like, oh my God, it's finally here, it's finally happening. But the problem is it going to happen in time and at the speed you think? Right, so to your point, it's incredibly hard to get these things done. The good news is, we are in a situation where we need to get better cost, better quality of care, or insurance systems are saying we're going to stop paying unless we're getting better ways of solving these problems because it's not sustainable. I'm still trying to recover from the fact that we all have a disease, and apparently it's called being a human. But it's definitely incredible times, I think. And we invested in 3 companies One is basically going after mental wellness and mental health. And my theory on that is 20 years from now, 30 years from now, people are going to look back and say, how in the world did we have an interaction with a doctor that was not through a mental health or mental wellness therapist? Because we're communication, we communicate as a species. That's our primary things we do. And so anything you say really leads to how you feel, and how you feel might lead to your health and your behaviors. And so the fact that we don't have someone looking after our head on a regular basis, and we just look at our physical aspects of our bodies and organs, makes no sense to me. And I think in the future, people are going to be saying that's a natural entry point to your health. Everybody should have a mental therapist, quote unquote. And it will come different fashions. The other one we're looking at is, of course, cancer. Big information problems here, just to do some matchmaking, just to understand your own biology. And then the last one is in actually cardiac events, right? You're going to hospitals, something serious just happened to you, and you're being discharged, and they're basically saying, hey, see you in 2 weeks, or if anything wrong, just call us. I'm like, really? And just almost like died. And that's kind of what you're telling me. It's like, there's no better ways to really track what's happening with me and on an ongoing basis, and maybe even before I even have to ever have that event. And so that's where we're going. It's going to be more ubiquitous. It's going to be reaching many more people. And that's the exciting aspect. I think the market's going to be massive. Now, there's always these very niche areas that are very expensive, and so there's great companies to be built in those areas as well. When you come from the world of technology, you have a bias, and you're looking at what's the size of the market, how many millions of people are impacting, potentially you're driving real impact in what you're doing, and we can define impact. But there's always a feel-good element when you invest in healthcare or health tech-related businesses, right? Because you feel like you're contributing positively to society. And as venture capital, that's what we do. We invest in technology that we hope will improve the future. And so that's what we get excited about.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like there wasn't any wave that wanted to basically push healthcare forward. I understand in like the early 2000s there was this huge drive towards proteomics. So everyone knows genomics right now, right? Which is mainstream. Thank you, Illumina. Thank you, PacBio, for making for deep sequencing, all of these things.
Can you define genomics?
So genomics is wow, I don't even know how to define it.
Genomics is broadly defined as the study of genes, but has the industry movement has been really catalyzed by, I don't know if someone has seen this graph. So Moore's law is a law that in general predicts how the cost of computing varies over time. And Moore's law predicts like the cost of computing goes like this. If you look at this graph of what is the cost of sequencing a human genome, so we spent years to do the to sequence the first human genome, what was called as the Human Genome Project. That took years, and several labs across several universities in the country collaborated because one lab couldn't do it. And from that, when we sequenced the first human genome to today, the cost of genome sequencing has gone down like this. So it has plummeted. It has gone down much faster than what Moore's law predicts as the cost of computing movement over time. I think the stat is like 100x faster or something like that. But essentially, the process of sequencing human genome, which was extremely complicated when we did the Human Genome Project, has become so much simpler and easily available to the masses, again, thanks to Illumina and PacBio for developing these sequencers, which are machines this big, which any lab can own, and just sequence the human genome, which is something that no single lab across the whole country could do just a few years ago.
This is the perfect segue for what I'm about to say. So what's interesting about that, so it took how many years? 2000, I think 99, when was the first?
20 years or something.
20 years ago, basically, to reach this point where you've got all of these next generation type of sequencing. People actually tried to do something called proteomics, which is the study of proteins, modifications. And they tried to do it in 2005. And unfortunately, all, if not most of them, failed. They were too early. Of course, there's this Moore's law that basically you're looking at cost of compute. Basically, it's supposed to decrease. At least you had companies like PacBio and Illumina creating these MySeq high-tech type of deep sequencing devices. For proteomics, they did not exist. until 2015. 2015 was when they created, well, no, not necessarily, was when deep learning basically integrated with something called mass spec, a really old machine. It's called mass spec, time-of-flight machines, triple quads, that allowed you to actually interrogate the proteome in much more resolution, in much more detail. It's almost the exact same pattern going on with proteomics right now as it is with genomics 15 years ago. So right now, that's exactly what my company does. We're at the forefront of that wave that basically understands that you guys know what ELISA kits are, ELISA's immunoassays, where immunoassays are not very specific. Antibodies bind to everything, every part of a protein. Say 125 is an intact protein, and it has many different antibodies that will bind to it. Hence, if you create an immunoassay to find out the presence or absence of ovarian cancer, it's not that specific. But if you break down, say 125 into mucins, and you actually look at their isoforms, and you are able to categorize and quantify and find out those things in a high resolution way, awesome, you generate tremendous amounts of information that R can't even find out. So deep learning is an important thing. So when thinking about health tech and health bio, it's about the inflection points where, okay, are the tools there? Great. What are your tools, your mass specs? Aren't these 50-year-old machines? Yes, mass specs have just been really upgraded the past 3 years. Second, is the compute there? Yep. So this is my world where I can just basically stack. I used to mine Bitcoin like terahashing like 4, 5, 6 years ago when no one even heard of it. So doing this is actually one of the most important things that I've ever done. And the amount of resolution we get right now in human biochemistry, tremendous. But try pitching that to a doctor that has no idea what are you guys doing and why should I not use CA125? So now they decided.
What do you have against us?
So there's this entrenched pattern of behavior, right? So there's yes, there. Sorry. So that's interesting things happening right now for investors. But then here's the silver lining: they're investors. They're looking for exactly what you're doing right now, what you're thinking. And when you find them, they're going to tell all their friends that they were all wrong, and then they'll bring all of them together. So that's the interesting caveat. That's what I'm saying. When you guys are pitching to investors, like, again, I'm a seed investor. I've invested maybe, I don't know, a few dozen companies. I don't really look at these things, but you should ask the professional investors in the panel. But I think one of the more important things that I've learned in life science investing is a very, very strong trusted referral is very important. So that's just a caveat.
I would say important, but not enough. I want to see data. As I said, I want to see the clinical burden of proof, whether that is in the form of you having conducted some trials, having some publications. We understand that at early stages you're not going to have 1,000 patient trial, but you can go test your stuff out on 3 people. So I think the more data that you have, also very strong scientific evidence. So pull up the publications that really validate your product design. That what did you base your product on? What is the physiological problem that you're solving? Any entrepreneur who's pitching a business to me but doesn't really understand the problem and cannot articulate it well, cannot tell me what is the current standard of care and why that is the current standard of care, how much exactly their product is better than the current standard of care, and what in their product's design is making it better. You don't need to conduct a clinical trial or go publish a research paper to do that. You just need to understand the problem space and your product really, really deeply, and be able to tell me that. So I think I definitely look for that in an entrepreneur who's pitching.
I think the bottom line for the investor and the entrepreneur is at the end of the day, how the cost of healthcare is going to change. It used to be 7% of GDP in 1970. Today it is almost at 20%. Now the question is, how can you bring it down, because it directly impacts the consumer? And the way we can make that transformation is basically coming from, again, technology. Because we talked about genome sequencing, for example. The cost has come down from, $2 million to $1,000 or $200. So these kind of changes that the entrepreneur will bring through technology and the investor will invest through that will have a huge impact on the cost at some point in time. And I'm hoping that today it is 20%, hopefully it would be 17 or 18% a few years down the road.
So if the market's 20% and you're an investor, and your investment is going to bring the size of the market down, I mean, where's the incentive? Like, are you going to? I mean, what channels are going to be cannibalized, and what alternatives are you going to provide that are then valuable as an investor, you want to make your money back, right? So what are you going to do when the cost goes down, and what's it going to look like on the health tech front?
Look, if you're mirroring what happened in the technology, you're providing that technology to so many more people, right? I mean, technology and change is really augmenting market. If Uber was just helping you hail a cab, and the market that we're going after is Uber was taking cabs before Uber existed, it would not be worth what it's worth. And so technology has proven time and time over that it's expanding market, reaching out to people, making it more affordable. You look at robot investing, all the robot advisors out there, everybody's like, oh my God, it's going to disrupt high-end finance. I'm like, no, I'm sorry. High-end finance has been using that for decades, and the wealthiest of this world have been using that for a long time. What it's actually doing is now actually making it affordable for people like you and us that don't have much and actually can get better service using technology than not. And so I'm not so much concerned about, if the overall size of the pie, on one aspect will decrease, but it will augment on the other side. So I think the overall market opportunity for startups might increase actually, but it might cost the system less.
I think I totally agree with that. Just like the parallel to technology is completely valid. Like, I think many more people are using computers today than they were when there were mainframe computers that were the size of this room, and that's because it's possible to use personal computers when it was not. I think on the healthcare side, areas in which I can envision it augmenting could be things like people are just living longer. So obviously they're going to be using healthcare for longer if they're living longer. It could also be things like curing certain diseases. And I don't think that we can ever imagine making the world disease-free, right? And history, if you look back at history, in 1920 or so, there were like 25 primary, 1800s, there were 25 primary disease conditions that used to exist. And where have we come from that? Like, the technology has only advanced, the treatments have only improved for those 25 conditions. But there are so many other conditions that have developed over time. So our environment, our work environment, our physical environment is changing. We are living longer. That is going to obviously create newer issues. So I don't think the need for healthcare is going anywhere anytime soon. By reducing it as a percent of GDP, what you're doing is expanding the market, making it more affordable and accessible to all the people who cannot access it today.
Well, I think there's also international, right? I mean, there's a lot of people today that have barely access to any sort of healthcare. And that's people that now incredibly we can reach. We can start engaging, communicating with them. We can use these tools to do some self-diagnosis or prioritization of care. And that's also what's really exciting about this, is that, the ability to reach people at scale has changed. And so, now a small startup from here can reach people across the world pretty fast, pretty cost efficiently potentially. And so that's exciting as well from the prospect of, building companies that can have this exponential growth that we look as for as VCs, right?
So
I think we have a lot of Q&A at the end.
Few
I don't
more
know if
minutes.
they want to take it.
So I'm going to because I had a lot of questions, so instead I'm going
There's 5
to,
minutes left.
I'm going to condense them into a word soup, and you can take the ones that you like. But
Word soup.
let's see, privacy/HIPAA, FDA regulatory bodies, market fragmentation across even the United States, but also global barriers. So, please.
I'll take the FDA part of it, and not that I'm a regulator, but regulations are one of the strictest in the world that we have here. And that also contributes to some of the higher costs of healthcare. But having said that, as time is elapsing, FDA is also trying to be more modernized, trying to understand that technology is always going to be coming into play here. So there are many different strategies that FDA has laid out in the last couple of years. One is related to what is called the nutrition innovation strategy, where they are trying to tell people, if you have a better diet, you probably will have lesser of the chronic diseases. And Shubhra has written a very nice blog in LinkedIn, and I'll steal a couple of data points from that, where every other person in the room apparently has some sort of a chronic disease, which could be obesity, or it could be diabetes, or cardio problems. And 70% of the deaths are related to those chronic diseases, and 85% of the healthcare costs are devoted to that. So what FDA wants to do is to make sure that people understand that you have to eat better, and in order for you to understand how to eat better, we will come up with some guidelines. This is a human in passing that don't make joke of aging here. I'm turning 68 in 2 months, and part of a good or bad health is both genetics as well as lifestyle. I'm fortunate with good genes, I'm fortunate with a good lifestyle, but not everybody can do that or have done it. So they are coming up with some ideas on the labeling of the products, for example. Another thing which is on the technology side, that they are actually coming up with what is called a pre-certification of certain digital health companies. So they're trying to figure out how we can do that, because this is a new technology. FDA has never dealt with that. They have an incubator called Informed, which is for the tools development and treatment of cancer. And the last thing is related to what is called the National Utility on Real World Evidence, where the FDA is putting in $100 million to create the data from about 10 million patients. So I think FDA has become cognizant of the fact that we need to get into these areas now more, and they are taking, I think under the new Commissioner, Scott Gottlieb, some good things are happening and will continue to happen.
So I just want to add to that really, really quickly. FDA has never in the history of healthcare in the United States been more friendly to startups than it is today.
Exactly.
Scott Gottlieb has gone out on a limb. Seema Verma is making so many changes even on the reimbursement side for CMS. If you are developing a software company in healthcare, FDA is the friendliest it has ever been. Like, drug companies had it so much harder 20 years ago than you have it today if you're developing a digital health company. Scott Gottlieb has gone on a limb and said, we will look at any digital health company that doesn't fit into our existing regulations on a case-by-case basis and try to revise our regulations in order to fit the innovation that is happening. So it's definitely a lot friendlier. They just recently approved the first AI to detect a condition called retinopathy in your eyes for diabetes, and the AI proved that it can do just as good or a better job than the physicians. And FDA approved it. That's the first AI that has ever been approved for diagnosis for disease. So there are a lot of good changes happening on the FDA side.
So I just, I just like to draw a parallel. So when we were doing the blockchain, started from my garage, we were trying to explain that to the New York Fed in 2013. When people were getting indicted for money laundering and murder. I'm not kidding you. Silk Road happened at that time, so on and so forth. what's interesting about, so now that company started from my garage, is now in 60 countries, has 50, we're like a bank now, regulated like a bank, e-money licenses in Europe, 60 countries, different money transmission licenses. Here now we're going through CMS, which is basically the reimbursements and eventual FDA. The parallels I find in both in both regulatory pathways, aside from them saying it's you again, but now it's cancer, really. So is a quality control system, that's very important, and a reproducibility system, and a performance system.
Documentation.
Yes. So documentation is captured in a great quality system that allows you basically to show your controls and all of these things. They were very important because, when we did the blockchain, again, it took us, I don't know what's with 9 months, but it took us 9 months to get a bank account when we started that. So we had to show regulators of all of these things. The same parallels apparently apply here. Right now, our assay, so it's a liquid biopsy. We get a pinprick of your blood, goes into mass spec, generates information. We can stage you. And we've done our trials on 1,500 people from over 30 sites in the United States and in Europe. And we're doing our global clinical trial for in the next 12 to 18 months for in active enrollment right now. Explaining that, we have this decision support tool that's going to update itself almost in real time to CMS, and telling them that, this is not a static application, this is actually a dynamic application. It's one of the harder things we're explaining. So it's called the CLIA process. It's an interesting process that you go through where you have to explain a quality system around that. So, but they're all listening apparently, and it's interesting that CMS is very engaged in trying to understand what the heck is this artificial intelligence doing with all of these algorithms changing by themselves, and you don't even know what's going on with these invisible.
Because they're figuring it out with you. They're also evolving as the industry is evolving. Unlike if you're developing a drug, they've had processes in place for last 20 years. They're not going to change them for a teeny-meeny little startup like yours, right? But with respect to some of these cutting-edge technologies, they may have never seen a startup which is doing what you're doing before. So you are going there and educating them, and as long as you have good documentation, you make a good case for yourself, they're willing to listen. And you might be the one that is actually creating the path for people to come behind you in terms of what the regulations would be.
I agree. So I think what really helped with the blockchain company, and what's really helping right now with CMS, is the active conversation and going to their office and teaching them. I was telling them about blockchain. It's just interesting. I'm telling them about blockchain, how you don't need treasury, and how you can do cross-ledger type of transactions. And I'm teaching CMS basically how software basically is more intelligent and how it updates itself. So it's not going to be detrimental because, of course, you do these we call them freeze cycles. You're freezing software. It doesn't update itself in real time. So now it's learning to work with them and educating them on that process. And I find, I'm listening to a lot of pitches from a lot of tech entrepreneurs getting into life sciences, and they are, these things are not even top of mind. So I think regulatory pathways are very, very important, aside from a clinical pathway and a usage pathway and a reimbursement pathway. So these are all very separate pathways that you have to be very cognitive of when entering and trying to get, because these will all be asked by your investors. And I find that having crystal clear understanding of all those individual pathways, how they work together, and your understanding of those things, very important. And regulatory, IP, very good IP lawyer, by the way. IP, I've never realized how important IP is. So the IP strategy, and of course how you do that, because that's governed by the USPTO, so on and so forth. So I just threw a lot of stuff at you, but these are the realities of raising like not seed, like a Series A disrupting company, being like literally first to market. So right now, our biggest problem was we did not have a comparable. So the company, for my company, we did not have a comparable. It's very hard to find a
So you
company.
see the irony here, right? We're asking you to build an innovative company that is disruptive to the industry, where we're approving you based on you having a substantial predicate, as FDA calls it, which is basically a pre-existing device that your device can be compared to. And if you have that, then it's an easier pathway to approval because FDA knows how to make sense of whatever you're submitting to them because they have seen it before. But if you're doing something that is actually disruptive and that is truly innovative, then you better be prepared to go and educate them. The good thing is that they're willing to listen, which is more than many entrepreneurs who started healthcare companies 20 years ago could ask for.
You do have to educate the investors first.
You have to educate everybody.
Yes.
The burden of education is, I don't even think that's true about just healthcare. If you are starting a company, it is your job that the person across the table understands what you're saying. You need to be able to explain it to them like a 5-year-old. If you can't do that, then most entrepreneurs think their job is to build a great product. Your job as an entrepreneur is so much more than just building a great product. If no one understands this amazing product that you've built, no one's going to use it. Your users, your customers, your investors, the burden of education is always going to be on you. And the sooner you accept that and the more you build that into actually your product experience, it shouldn't have to come with a user manual. It should be so intuitive. Your product design should itself be able to it should be so intuitive that anyone can understand it. And you have to keep that in mind when you're designing your product.
So a few things. So thank you for being a pioneer, because you always need pioneers in industries that kind of like trail the path. And I think, healthcare in this industry where being a fast follower might not be a bad idea either, because you can benefit from that work that's being done and better understanding. So again, timing of your market and when you're going to market. I would pick words that actually you didn't throw out there, which in my context are very important. It's team and talent, and we were talking about how health tech is this interesting crossover of technology and health. And often you won't find the deep domain knowledge expertise around health and deep domain knowledge expertise in technology in one brain. They're not the same person. And it's rare when you do find them, and when you do find them, you tend to invest in them. But often they have to be part of a team, and they have to see the chemistry between these people and how they work together. And we see apply that in everything when we invest in transportation, and you talk about autonomous systems, and all these things also need to be figured out. I mean, the regulation needs to change and evolve. I'm not sure I'm okay to have autonomous cars running around there. There are things we're doing. We're not letting drugs in the market, freely testing, figuring out what's going to happen. Yeah, we're letting cars like that. I'm like, I'm pro for it in advancing the technology, but I think we need to build some safeguards, right? And so back to the talent point, we're investing in a lot of AI companies and that are applying in different contexts. And the number one pain point is recruiting, right? Because finding founders, that's almost the easy part. If you're talented and you have the knowledge and skills and you're going to be building a company, and if you know anything about AI, that's the time to go build a company, right? But employee number 2, 3, 4, 5, these are the hard ones to find. And they're usually working at bigger, larger companies that can afford a lot more than you can as a startup. And what we have found very interesting for health tech companies is that the mission attracts talent. And so one of our company, mid-air, co-founder battle, one person out. Bad luck is the tech co-founder. And here we are with a very still technical CEO, right? And he's doing the work to go find that incredible unicorn out there that's supposed to be that tech co-founder that everybody's dreaming to find in that very specific field. I mean, the guy built an AI algorithm to literally go identify the 20 people in the world that had the skill he wanted. I'm not kidding. And so first of all, you sit and say, okay, I'm backing the right guy. This guy is relentless. He's going to go find the right guy. And then he finds that guy, and the guy is being offered $500,000 plus stock plus whatever to go work at a big company. I won't name the name. And he decides to join that startup that we backed. And the reason he did it, he said, look, I can go optimize algorithm all day long, or I can go help people not die of cancer. And so I choose to do that. And sure enough, we're in an ecosystem where we've proven time and time again that equity can be worth a lot of money. And more importantly, you want to have a purpose in your life. And so you still have that shot in the health tech world, more so than maybe other industries. And so that's what you need to leverage, I think, when you try to pull talent in.
I
So
think
do something worthwhile.
That's an amazingly important point, because as a startup, your founding team, not even your founding team, you're the first 10 to 15 people in your company are foundational. And they have to be laser focused. They have to be very, very aligned with your mission. I will tell you that even as investors, we look for that. We look for teams where people come to us, especially in the initial 5 or 10 people in the company, and say, we really deeply care about this mission because I lost a family member to it, or because I had a personal experience that put me through this. Not just because they gave me a better offer than the other door that I knocked. So I think you will tremendously benefit both in attracting talent, retaining talent, fundraising, and honestly just building the company. Because think about it, when a company is in early stages, there is not just your sales team. You don't have a 50-people sales team, an army that is crawling the floors and selling it for you. Your first 5 people are your salespeople. They're the ones who are going to be telling everyone about your product. And they're way more likely to talk about it every chance they get if they actually care about it. So I think in a lot of ways, the early team being very aligned on mission is super important.
Please give it up for the panel.
All right, so we're gonna take questions from the audience. Who's got a question for the panel? So come on up. We're gonna form a line here. We're gonna do this real efficiently. We'll take as many questions as possible. We have half an hour. Lisa, go for it.
Here. Thanks. I was wondering if the panelists could comment on.
Into the mic.
Oh, hello? Yeah. I don't need the mic. I can talk loud enough. Oh, for the video, okay. Yeah, I was wondering if the panelists could comment on the benefits and challenges of international investment in small startups here, and sort of the issues that come up, and
Can you be more specific?
Yeah, just to clarify the question, what exactly do you mean by international investment?
for example, Chinese investment, European investment.
In U.S. startups?
In U.S. startups. We're part of a diagnostic startup, and we've found certain resistance to investing in diagnostics in terms of local investors, partly because of the long runway and Theranos credibility gaps and the rest of it. But we found a lot more openness from potential investors overseas, and I was just interested in experiences of good and bad experiences in terms of taking investment when you're still at very early stage, taking overseas investments, combining that with funding from local sources and that sort of thing.
So I can take that one. I think it really depends on what you're looking for as a startup. What are you looking for? And I advise every startup to have a viewpoint on what do you want your investors to bring to the table. Because we as investors bring a lot to the table other than the capital. Honestly, the market is pretty flooded with capital. You can get capital in a lot of different places. So it really depends on, are you looking for them to make strategic connections for you? Is your first launch market US or is it China? If your first launch market is China, maybe they're well positioned to make some connections for you. Maybe they can connect you to a distributor, and that would be really helpful for an early stage company. But if you are a US company, you plan to be a US company for the foreseeable future, and you think there are specific areas in terms of recruiting, product development, commercialization, regulatory help that you need help with, then you have to critically evaluate if this investor who is located in a different geography has any experience or ability to do that. And I wouldn't discount them. I wouldn't say that just because they're a Chinese investor, they know nothing about the US market. There are plenty of Chinese investors that have invested in 5 different US medical device companies, and they've gone through the process 5 times and can be very helpful. But that's the homework that you need to do. So the part of the homework is internal and part of it is external. The way I like to think about it is, first you have to, just like if you were going to look for a new job. You have to think about internally as a company, what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses or areas where I need help or augmentation. And that has to be a soul-searching exercise from the founding team of the company. Once you have that, then you have to go out and think about, does this investor offer me help on these things? And if they do, and if you have conviction that they do, then by all means, I don't think there is a stigma attached to it in any way. But the other thing that I would want you to also be careful about is don't think just about this financing. Think long term. Because when we as investors are coming in, let's say I'm coming into a Series D round, I will absolutely look at who invested in Series C. So you have to think long term and think about, are these people good people to have around my table? Will they attract other good people? Or will they put off other good people? Or maybe they don't even know other good people because they just don't know this market. So you have to think about how's that going to impact your ability to both build the company and fundraise in the longer run.
Yeah, I would just add that some investors are good at certain stages and others at other stages. And so I think to the life cycle aspect of how you think about that. Other aspects might be, the type of deals they experience and the terms and conditions they might put in your term sheets. They might not be market, they might not be standards, they might be specific. The velocity at which they might move might change. They might express interest quickly, but they might not actually move fast when it comes to actually wiring the money. And then, being an investor in AI, it's an interesting world because we're investing in sensitive technology. And so it's different than healthcare, if you will, but again, where are your market, where is your data living, how sensitive is your data? These are the things that you might want to consider as well.
All right, next question.
Hi there, I'm Shervin. Ben, you had mentioned earlier that one of the human parts of what you do is that there's a communication between different people, and that leads to health, that leads to our emotional state, that leads to our outcomes, etc. And you also, when I look at health from the point of view of, let's say, where the rubber meets the road, the foundational piece, the cellular unit, if you will, of healthcare, to me, that's the doctor-patient interaction. And when I've interviewed dozens of doctors, they describe to me that the single most difficult challenge that they have, two-part. One is having the accurate information, and two, making sure that they can get it rapidly, whether it's from whatever source that is. Having seen healthcare startups and seeing what we were able to accomplish for the healthcare world, what is the single biggest missing link to help doctors do their job effectively and efficiently?
Electronic medical record. It's a one-word answer. It doesn't even need elaboration, honestly. I think it's just horrendous. Has anyone here ever looked at and worked through an electronic medical record? In order to know if I'm seeing a patient, in order for me to understand if this patient got a blood glucose test yesterday, for me to understand what that blood glucose level was, which is a single number about this patient, about a simple test that happened yesterday, I have to go through 27 screens and 103 clicks. If Steve Jobs would have to go through that experience, he would literally kill himself. It is just, I think that is the biggest barrier in patient-provider communication.
First off, thank you for this is really cool. I'm new to the area, and the only experience I've had with health tech investing is from podcasts and stuff. So this is neat. But for me, I'm a recent chemical engineer grad, and I work at a biotech company, kind of mid-sized, named Pharmaceutical. And my personal debate is whether I want to do grad school or not. And I see all this cool technology, and I was wondering from an investor perspective what your experience is with when people come in having a PhD, if that's something you see in people that are making an impact in this industry.
We are entrepreneurs first, and I yet have to see that venture investing is a strategy that really works. I mean, you want incredibly smart and brilliant talent, but sometimes, I mean, your education is meant to teach you how to think. And so you can get that in the real world, you can get that on the benches of the school, but usually the real world is actually a much tougher evaluation of that critical skills. So to me, if you have a skill in the market that's in high demand and you don't require more advanced studies to better be in control or discover faster information that you need to have to be successful, I would go with the real world experience as much as I can before I go back and say, you know what, because right now you're thinking that that's what you need and you go back to school to do this, but if you spend another 2 years involved every day in building something and doing something with that knowledge, you might realize that, you know what, actually that's not exactly what I needed to study. I should still study that instead. And so spend a bit more time to the real world until you kind of go and deepen your knowledge into something specific. That would be my advice.
Can I just add a little bit of flavor to that? So as someone who has gone through 11 years of school, I just want to say it really depends on what you're working on. But the short answer to your question is if you know that you want to start a company and be an entrepreneur today, if you know that, don't go do a PhD just because you think it will be easier to fundraise with a PhD. That is a bad way of thinking about it. The right reason to do a PhD is because you want to study a specific area that is interesting to you. And there are
some people you want to hire during doing that PhD and then you quit. And then you hire them.
I think there is a difference. You can do that when building a team, but I think there is a difference. There are specific areas within healthcare where I would look for deep domain expertise. But if your goal is just to be a healthcare entrepreneur, there are plenty of areas that you can build a very good and successful company in for which you don't need deep domain expertise. And there are always alternatives in terms of augmenting the team. Finding a co-founder is a really good one. If you think you're really passionate about business and working in the real world, find a co-founder who is deep on the scientific side. You cannot do everything by yourself in a company anyway. So you have to recognize what your core strength is, what your core interest is, what are you passionate about, capitalize on those strengths and interests, and augment everything else around you.
So if just coming from a guy that's so we're hiring 2-3x in the next couple of months, learn at the expense of other people. That's an important thing. Meaning, BioMarin, cool company. I would go and find a founding team with a founding team that needs kind of your skills, and then allow you to do anything you want to do, and you learn as much as you can from a founding team, and you grow it into a Series B, Series C. That will, this is just for the people with a PhD out there. I have a fake one, just to let you guys know. This will take you much further, honestly, than a very deep PhD in terms of if you want to become an entrepreneur. Because I think the real hands-on, hard work, headbutting with a founding team, growing that from Series A to B, that's one of the hardest things to find. And if you're able to penetrate that kind of organization, that's like 200 years worth of experience right there.
Well, in short, when in doubt, go for experience and then go back to studies if you want to.
And I would say, I'm coming at this from a little bit of a different perspective, but your background is in chemistry. And certain industries have a higher expectation for education than others. Like if you had a computer science degree or electrical engineering degree, then undergrad is fine. But if you're in chemistry, you're starting to get into something where the expectation is sometimes a little bit higher. And the investors here might not feel that way, but if you were to, instead of going entrepreneur, you decided to go patent attorney, like what I do, the advanced degree might be pretty important. And if it was like life sciences, then yeah, you need advanced degree. Yeah. So it depends on where you're going to go. But I would say chemistry is that midpoint between where there might be some advantages to go to school. Right?
Can I just very quickly, this is something, the way I think about life decisions is do what you want to do right now. Mm-hmm. Don't do it because you think it will be helpful later.
The greedy algorithm.
All right, next question.
Thank you so much.
Shubhra and Ben, you both mentioned mission, importance of mission and commitment of the team to the mission. And my question relates to the commitment of the investors to the mission. We're, well, two of the other board members and I are physicians. And we're forming a company that we think will probably incorporate as a California benefit corporation, which for those who don't know means that the triple bottom line has to be considered in terms of the actions of the board, and an activist investor can't come along sometime later and force a mission creep that takes us away from our intention of saving the world, basically. And so we're looking basically for impact investors and folks who can live with the idea of the California Benefit Corporation. What I'm wondering is that kryptonite for investors? Or is that something that people can get behind?
I would say, I don't think it's kryptonite. I think, especially if you're looking for impact investors, hopefully they're driven by impact rather than the corporate structure, and it shouldn't discourage them. But I would say that for mainstream investing, it does make it a tad bit harder, just because you don't fit in the mold. And someone has to make an extra effort because there will be some different legal documentation, something like that. So you have to be aware of that. I would say that it might make fundraising a little bit more difficult. I can't speak to the specific perspective of impact investors. My guess would be that they would be more friendly than mainstream investors. But we try to stay away from like weird corporate structures. I don't think incorporation is a huge issue, but there are some people who are trying to do both a public and a private, and they're trying to do some kind of a creative corporate structure. We're like, we don't want to spend the time and energy to understand and navigate this thing. So it could discourage some mainstream investors.
Very interesting that you brought up that question, because in a month or two, I am joining hands with 3 scientists to start a B Corp. And the kind of diseases we are going to go after are the rare diseases and some of the neurodegenerative diseases. And we are looking for investors, or we will be looking for investors who are strictly on the social impact side of it, not someone who is looking for 2x, 5x, 10x returns on their money.
Well, so I take the other side of that for a second. I mean, as venture capitalist, I think technology and success and impact can be all together. And I think it's been proven time and time again that incredible managers doing good tend to outperform markets. And so I don't think you need to start a specific type of corporation to do good in this world. It's good that you want to put that in the charter of your company because that's a core value proposition, or it's a core value, period, that you have as a business, as a founder. I think culture of your company is so fundamentally important, and to attract the right talent, back to the point I said earlier. So yeah, the legal aspect, if investors are not very familiar with it, they're going to have to go and educate themselves. I think if your mission and purpose is to drive impact through incredible products that deliver value to people, I think you'll find an investor. But I have a problem when people try to differentiate impact and making money, because I don't think they are mutually exclusive.
From a very practical point of view, I think there's the technological due diligence that like an investor needs to do on your technology. One of the longer and often more painful one is the legal due diligence. So what you want to do is you want to make your entity a lot simpler, actually plain vanilla. That's probably one of the best things, just because this is, or you're going to have to spend a tremendous amount of legal resources in trying to explain to them why this is your corporate structure, and then they might even ask you to restructure. And I've just gone through, well, no, I don't go through this anymore. Maybe 15 years ago, yes. So plain vanilla works.
Well, legally speaking, and perhaps Bill can tell more about it, there's not much difference in the legalities between C Corp or the B Corp. Most of the articles of incorporation remain the same, except that being a B Corp, you are bringing some additional, as you mentioned, about the vision or mission of your company. But again, from where I'm coming for my particular organization is that our personal profit motives are also very, very low. that we are not trying to create an organization where we would be becoming multimillionaires out of that process. The whole idea is to how we can benefit the patient. And with a B Corp, there would be some investors, some family offices or high net worth people who would be interested. Oh yeah, it's a B Corp. That means that they are going to do something good, and they would be more interested in investing money in that. But it's, as you said, social impact and large profits, they don't go together. It's one or the other.
Yeah, and I think to clarify what I said, based on the purpose of your company and your mission and your vision, you should match the capital sources to the type of company you're building. And I think people have this understanding that VC, we fund everything under the sun. No, we don't. We're actually, saying no 99.9% of the time. And so we're not very well liked sometimes because we tell founder no a lot. Come back, bring more data, bring more this, oh, here's some feedback and see how you react to that feedback. But, so I think it's very important that I tell founders, why are you doing what you're doing? So back to your point earlier a bit, where like the why is so important. And then what's your vision for this business? In 5 years, in 10 years, what does success means to you, Mr. Founder? Because based on that, I can get an assumptions of where you're going, what your vision is, and not everybody is meant to build, rockets. We sell rocket fuel. If you want to go to the moon and beyond, we're here. But if you want to build a nice scooters to go, through the street of San Francisco, that might not be rocket fuel you need, right? So I think you need to really match your source of capital to the mission of your business.
Great. Thanks to all of you.
All right, maybe we have time for one last question.
Okay.
Go for it.
Actually, good thing there's one guy.
Also, I guess on the legal train a little bit too. When I asked the opposite of the first question about international investment, I just started working with a group that helps to connect international startups with U.S.-based investors. And I'm wondering if you guys run into any hurdles with, maybe too early stage companies or not no legal entity in the U.S.
I have a ton of experience in the area. If you want, Bootstrap Labs, we are foreign. I'm from France. My co-founder's from Sweden, or people from Italy. Or we're like all nations, and we're basically the average company in San Francisco because it's such a diverse ecosystem. People here don't ask you where you come from; they ask you where you're going. And so I think we don't really judge people or put them in buckets. I think if you look at the track record of actually immigrants coming into the Bay Area building companies, it's incredible. Their success rate is really high. But I tell you, any company that comes from abroad and comes to Silicon Valley thinking, I'm going to fly by, do my Series A, I'm going to fly by, raise a round. I'm sorry, it's like any other ecosystems. You don't come and raise money. It's like, I would take the analogy of you don't get married to the guy or the girl that is on the other side of the world that's passing by for a week, right? We're in the business of getting married. We're going to be together for the next 10 years, maybe less, working together and hopefully successfully, but we're going to have some ugly days. And so I don't want to be investing in someone that's going to leave the day after I put my money into this business, which means that also you need to understand as a founder, we are raising money too, right? Venture capitalists are investing some of their money, but they're also investing third-party capital. And when these people give me their money, they don't expect me to go invest, in France or in Spain, because they don't worry about that. I've got investment in funds over there. I'm investing in you because you're in the Bay Area and I want you to invest in innovation here. I want you to invest in this ecosystem that's incredible, and the velocity at which you would move here would be 5x what you're going to do anywhere else in the world. And so I actually don't care how much it costs over there. Even if it's 5 times cheaper, you're going to move 5 times faster here. And so these are the things that matters to me. And so as an investor, unless you're reincorporated in America, unless you have flipped your company, the founders are here, and they actually have visas to stay and work in this country long enough until you prove that you succeed or you fail, I'm not going to invest in your business. And I think 99% of the VCs and investors around the Bay Area across the United States have similar mandates and frameworks. There are very few that will actually go divert from that and invest abroad, even if you're here and your entity is abroad. Right? Again, that would be a breach of our mandate with our limited partners.
I think for me, there's two questions to answer there. One, first and foremost, can I trust you? And that's true for every founder that I'm investing in, but it might be harder for me to achieve that trust for someone who's coming from a country where I have no roots, and if I have no way of doing your background checks, I have no idea how good a school you're coming from, how good a company you worked at before. So that's the first piece. And the burden of proof is on you to be able to, because I don't know anything about where you're coming from. So can you help me get there? The second bigger question is, can I help you? Because if you're building a company in Spain, I don't know anyone in Spain, how am I going to be adding value to you as an investor? So I think many venture firms think about this, but we think about this first and foremost. We don't want to be the people who are just providing you capital. We want to be involved, we want to be helpful, we want to be active investors. I'm not investing in a mutual fund. I'm investing in a business that I am building with you together every step of the way. So if I cannot be helpful because of geographical constraints, then I'm not the right investor for you. And even though right now you might feel that in the short term your fundraising has ended and you have achieved success, in the longer term, I'm actually guilty of making you miss out an opportunity to have the right partners on the table. And I don't know that I want to be in that position.
Yeah, and I think that value add we're talking about, or being active and supportive of founders, we need to create alpha, and we know that we have seen companies like you before. We have made the mistakes you have made. We have people that can help you answer some of these questions faster, and so yeah, that's why historically venture capital has remained a cottage industry, because it doesn't scale, because it's very hard to make that knowledge portable and make these people accessible to you. It's changing slowly, and we're internally at Bootstrap Lab, we're working on AI and machine learning applied to venture itself. What is it that we do, and what can we scale? If I can connect you with the right person at the right time in your life, I change your life forever. And that's what value add is really in a lot of ways, a venture capitalist. And so how we make that more efficient and happening virtually and then also in the physical world, these are the things that we're looking at solving.
Super helpful, thank you. Actually, we have time for one last quick question. And maybe some quick answers.
Sure.
Yeah, go for it. Quick.
Okay, thank you. My question is a technical question for you, Aldo. So I talked stealth health a little bit. Stealth health, right?
He's in stealth mode. He's coming
Stealth
in
mode,
stealth.
yeah.
Yes, that's yes. So we're in stealth, which means we're not going to tell you what we do.
So I saw some similar companies like using only mobile phone and pre-diagnosing or like warning you about your migraine or PMS pain or something. But I was wondering, what is your focus? Are you going to use your device for diagnosis or preventing diseases? Or if that's the case, where do you think is the limit? Like detecting a heart attack, or can you detect cancers without making any molecular diagnostics, just with your sensors and your deep learning algorithm?
So we're not creating proprietary instruments. We are using instruments that exist in the world right now, and we are switching all of their software into ours. And we are supercharging it using, of course, deep learning, all of these things. So what's going to come out basically is, there are two indications. One is we can do something called biomarker discovery. That discovery can either become something for a liquid biopsy, which we already have multiple right now going through clinical trials. Or the other one could be for target discovery, which is more for the drug discovery, looking at different pathways and so on and so forth. The toolkit or the assay that we've assembled right now, which consists of mass spec and deep learning, seriously, that's it. We can interrogate the proteome like never before, and we can come up with a lot of tremendously biological significance. So we're going to come out with a first liquid biopsy. We already have commercial partners offshore, so that's a very interesting thing about someone asking me about the offshore investors. So we have a commercial partner offshore already, just because of the way our assay is performed. So we've done 1,400 trials. So.
Are you purchasing data? Or
No, we generate our own.
Oh.
Yeah, of course. We did in silico exercises as a proof of concept. And then, of course, you had to basically do your own enrollment, retrospective and prospective studies. And then the thing that investors don't want to hear is the word platform. Platforms are poison pills because it shows that the team is unfocused. I'm just glad that I've had 15 years of experience doing this, so I could basically direct the team into, we're a liquid biopsy. But really, I mean, if the tech we do is platforming, we're coming up with novel, whether biomarkers, whether they become biomarkers for disease or whether they become biomarkers for pathways. And we've shown a lot of, we have And we're doing a number of in vivo models. Let's just say that. So the company's name is VEN, VENN, like the diagram. So.
Thank you so much.
All right, let's give it up for our panel. Let's give it up for our moderator, Bill Allen. All right, so you guys can stick around, talk to the panel, network. Please take some food home. We'd like to leave the building by 9 p.m. So thanks for coming, and we'll see you next time.